Hello everyone, R.S. Jafarzadeh here. This video is lesson number 2, where we're going to learn how to work with JavaScript a bit more. Last time, we learned how to make a simple HTML page with some simple tags. We learned that HTML is made up of these angle bracket things called tags, and they're simply instructions for your web browser. We learned that there is the language of CSS, which is the style of your page. And we learned that we just type in the name of the tag and then followed by curly brackets with the styles listed inside in between those curly brackets for each of the tags we want to add style to. And then we learned about JavaScript, which is the focus of this course and where we make things interactive. That's what JavaScript is there for. So you can think of it as HTML being the content of your page, CSS being the style of your page, and JavaScript being what makes it interactive. What we want to do today is we're going to move on to lesson 2 and work more on this part, which is making the page interactive. Because odds are, if you're using some kind of website builder or the design is being done for you, you can just embed the JavaScript in those pages and make those pages interactive. So that's why we're focusing more on this. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close these tabs for the time being. I don't even need this welcome one here, but what I do want to do is I want to create a new workspace. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Open Folder, and I'm going to make a new folder in here in the same Visual Code Studio folder. I'm going to call this Lesson 2, Making a Quiz. All right, so we're going to make a simple quiz. And again, these folders, it doesn't really matter if I use capital letters or spaces, but anything inside that folder that's going on my web page, I don't want to make any spaces in there because it's going to cause problems if we're uploading things to a server. So just keep that in mind. So I've made this folder called Make a Quiz. I'm going to open it and click Select Folder. It's going to ask me if I want to save my previous workspace. I can say, sure, let's save it. And I'm going to save my lesson 1 there. And then now I'm making a new workspace. It's going to ask me if I want to trust the authors. I do. I'm going to say check the box, trust the authors in this folder, because that's me. I'm going to say trust the authors. And now we are in a new workspace. I'm going to create a new file. You can click new file here. You can click new file here. You can click new text file. Any of those are fine. I'm going to click new file and name the file once again index.html, because actually, you know what? No, let's not call it. Let's call it quiz.html. And I didn't mention in the previous video why I called it index. The index file is like the main page of most websites. And what that means is when you go to www.whatever.website.com, there is, depending on how it's configured, usually if you have an index page in that website, that's the first page that loads. You don't type in www.whateverwebsite.com / blah blah blah.html. You don't do that. It automatically opens that home page for you. That's usually index. So that's why I named it that. In our case, it doesn't really matter that much because odds are you're going to be copy pasting code into a editor on your website builder, but if you have questions about that, let me know. Anyway, back to this. Quiz.html is what we're naming it. I'm going to press enter. It's going to ask me where I want to save it. It should default to lesson 2. I'm going to create a file in there. And for this lesson, we are not going to make a CSS file or a separate JavaScript file. I'm going to keep everything in here, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. Okay, so I'm going to start off by setting up the basics of my document, bracket, exclamation point. And notice the Visual Studio Code is already figuring out what I want to type. So if it knows what I want to type, which is doc type, I'm going to press tab, and it should finish that line for me. I'm going to press enter, bracket, HTML bracket. Press enter, it'll automatically make the stop tag, bracket head bracket. It'll again automatically make the stop tag, bracket meta char set equals quote UTF-8. Notice that I'm filling this out pretty quickly, and the reason is, well, it's filling it out for me. When it highlights the correct text, I just press tab and it fills in the blanks. Press enter there, bracket title, bracket simple quiz. And then I'm going to, I think that's it. That's all we really need there. I go to the end of the head and make a bracket, body bracket, and double check, make sure you have the same thing I have. Notice that I've nested the content inside the tag. So I have the content inside the head tag has been indented twice. Same thing with the body. This just makes it visually easier to see, keep ourselves organized. In the body, I'm going to type in bracket h1 bracket and just call it, let's say, my quiz. Let's save it and take a look at what we have so far. Control S, Command S, file save. Either of those are fine. I'm going to debug and run. And we're going to go ahead and open it in Edge again. And here is my quiz. There is simple quiz. Pretty simple. Now, last time I showed you how to add the color by making a separate CSS file, but there is another way. Right inside the body tag, I can type in style. And inside the style, I can write the CSS I want. For example, color, colon, and then I can write the color I want to put in. So I can either pull up a color picker or use one of the ones it gave me. So just to keep it simple, I'll just choose beige. Or you can put the hex value there. Oh, and by the way, you can also change the color here as well, which is a nice feature of this code editor. So, yep, and if I save it now and I go back and refresh it, oh, actually, I should have written background dash color. Change the text file font colors. Background dash color. That's what I wanted. Oh, mistake there. There we go. That's what I wanted there. And so now I can just add the style within it. So that's what I meant, that you don't necessarily have to make a separate file. Usually, if I'm making a separate file for all my CSS, I'm making multiple pages linked to that CSS file to know what they should look like. But for the purposes of this course, we're not going that deep. Okay, so now I'm going to make a paragraph here, bracket P bracket, and say, please answer the questions by choosing the best option. And then after that, I'm going to press enter again. I'm going to make a button. Actually, you know what? Let's make a picture. Bracket img src equals, and then I'm going to put that cat picture in this folder as well. So if I go back in the first lesson, I used that cat.jpg. I'm just going to copy this file over, copy and paste it in here, so that I also have the cat.jpg to work with here, but you can use any picture you want. Just make sure it's all one word and pay attention if you have any capital letters. Try to use a JPEG or a PNG file. GIF is also acceptable. Okay, so I'm going to go here in src and type in cat.jpg. If you recall, that cat picture was really big, so I'm just going to type in width equals quote, let's put 300 px and quote and bracket. If I save and refresh my web browser here, there is my paragraph. There's the picture of the cute cat. Let's go back over here. On the next line, I'm going to add in a new paragraph, bracket P bracket, name the animal in the image, period. And on the next line, I'm going to type in bracket button bracket. I'm going to give the button an ID, because in order for JavaScript to communicate with this, each tag that it's going to interact with needs an ID. It needs a name. I'm going to type in ID equals, and we'll just call this btn1, end quote. So that's going to be button 1. And then in between the tags, in between the start and the stop tag, I'm going to write down what it's going to say. So let's just say the name of the animal. So I'll put dog in the first button. And then I'm going to make another button, bracket button ID equals quote btn2, all lowercase, and quote and bracket. And this will be cat. And we're going to make one more, bracket button ID equals quote btn3, end quote, and bracket, and for this one I'll write frog. Okay, so we have 3 different buttons, and if I save and refresh it, you'll notice that all 3 buttons are in a row. That's because I didn't separate them. Even though I wrote them on separate lines here, you have to specifically give it instructions to make a new line by making a paragraph or a break, a bracket BR or a bracket P. So okay, so now I have my buttons. They don't do anything, but they're there. And if I go to my developer tools, you'll notice that in console, there are no errors. That's a good thing. So we're good to go. I've opened my console here, no errors. My page is loading. We're good so far. Okay, and still inside the body here, we're going to add in another paragraph, bracket P bracket. But for this paragraph, I'm going to make an attribute of ID equals, and I'm going to call this paragraph, this paragraph feedback. And the reason I did this is because in JavaScript, I need a paragraph where I can say if the user got it right or wrong. And for now, I'm not going to write anything in here. We're not going to put anything there. It's just a placeholder for the feedback if they choose the wrong answer later. So far, I have 3 elements that JavaScript is going to interact with. btn1, btn2, btn3, and feedback. Pay attention, make sure you have the stop tags for everything. Make sure there's no spelling mistakes. And I think that's it. If I save it and refresh it, we won't notice any changes there, but there is an empty paragraph down here that's currently not being used. Still inside the body, I'm going to make a script tag, bracket script, bracket. Now in the previous video, I added the script on a separate file, but in this video, we're going to add the script here. So what I'm going to do is go and press enter, and I'm going to write the JavaScript in here. And when I'm typing between these 2 tags, I am no longer typing in HTML. I am now typing in JavaScript. So keep that in mind as we go. In between these tags, I'm going to write my JavaScript code. So the first thing we need in JavaScript are variables. Now you might remember that from the first video from last week, but a variable is basically a place in the computer's memory that stores information. So if I make a variable by typing var and typing btn1, I'm making a variable called btn1. Notice that I'm using the same wording here. That is just to help me remember, but I could have called this something else. I could have called it magical button or my button 1 or whatever I wanted. This is a JavaScript name that I'm making, but I like to use the same name. So var btn1 equals, now I'm going to say what btn1 equals. And what I want to tell the web browser is that this btn1 should be set to this button here. The way I do that is I type in document, which is the HTML document, dot get element with a capital E, element by with a capital B, ID with a capital I. Notice that we're camel casing it. We learned about that in the first lesson. And then we put a parentheses, and in quotations, I'm going to write btn1 and quote and parentheses semicolon. So this btn1 here, it must match perfectly with what we wrote in our HTML file here. So, in our HTML tag here. So in the body, I wrote btn1. This must match. This doesn't have to match. We can name it something else. But to keep track of everything, I name them the same. We're going to rinse and repeat for the other 2 buttons. Var btn2 equals document. I'm going to tab it over, dot get elements. And it says as soon as I start typing get element, it figures out what I want. I press tab, it finishes the line for me. Parentheses, quote, and inside the quotes, I write btn2 and quote, and parentheses, semicolon, var btn3 equals document dot get elements by ID, parentheses, quote, btn3 and quote, and parentheses, semicolon. So I'm telling it to go into the document, the HTML document, get the element with the ID of btn3, and load it into btn3 as a variable in my JavaScript. Okay, so now we have that. We're also going to need one more variable. If you remember, we made a feedback paragraph. Var feedback equals quote, var feedback equals document dot get elements by ID. Press tab once it figures it out, and quote, and open parentheses, open quotation, feedback, that has to match what I have in JavaScript, and parentheses, semicolon. So these are the 4 variables that we have created. We don't need anything else there. I'm going to press enter a few times. Type in btn1.add event listener, open parentheses, quote, click, and quote. I'm going to explain what this is in a second. btn1 function, open, close parenthesis, semicolon. So what we just did here is we made an event listener. Now, if you remember what an event listener is, it's basically creating an event that, we're making it so that the web browser is waiting for an event to happen. And when that event happens, it does something. So in this case, I added a listener, an event listener to btn1. Okay, so that's this line, this part. Add an event listener to btn1. And the event it's listening for, there are 2 arguments. The event it's listening for is click. And when click occurs, it runs this function called btn1 function. So if we run this right now, it's going to give us an error. And the error is that it's not going to know what btn1 function is. In fact, if I save it right now and I go back to my browser and refresh it, it's going to give me an error. It's going to say btn1 function is not defined. It doesn't know what that is. Well, because I never told it what it is. So we're going to do that on the next line. I'm going to press enter. And I'm going to make a function called btn1. So we're going to type a function, function, btn1 function. I can select it by pressing down arrow and tab. I'm going to make an open close parentheses, and then I'm going to make an open curly bracket, skip a line, close curly bracket. I'm not putting anything in the parentheses, though I could, but I think I covered this in that first lesson. If I wanted to pass arguments into my function, have it do something and spit something back out, I could do that, but I am not going to because I don't want it to return anything. We can add the colon void if you want, but not necessary. Basically, it's just telling the web browser that it's not returning anything, so we're not wasting resources. But for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to add that right now. I'm just going to keep it simple. Inside the function, there we go. Inside the function, I'm going to tell it to do something. What I'm going to tell it to do is I'm going to tell it to update the feedback paragraph and say that's not right. So I type in feedback dot inner HTML, all capitals for HTML, equals, quote, try again. That's not correct. And we write what we wanted to tell the user. A dog says woof. And quote, semicolon at the end of that line. That's the break, that's the end. And if I save it and I go back and refresh it, the error is gone because now it knows what the function is. And if I press dog, it'll say try again. That's not correct. A dog says woof. Cat and frog do nothing because we have not made event listeners yet. So let's go do that. I'm going to add the other 2 event listeners right underneath the first event listener to keep them all organized. btn2.add event listener, parentheses, quote, click. That's the event it's listening for. And the function, we're going to keep the same naming convention, btn1, capital F function, camel casing it, function. btn2 function, close parentheses, semicolon. And we're going to make another event listener for button 3, add event listener, parentheses, quick, quotation mark, click, end quote, comma, and btn3 function, close parentheses, semicolon. Notice these are highlighted blue. And those are kind of like warnings because we have not made a function for these 2 yet. So I think that's why it's naming it that way or coloring it that way. Let's go after the end of the first function here. I'm going to go to the end of that line, press enter, make another function, btn2 function. Notice that it turned yellow now because we are using it. And we're going to make an open close parentheses. Again, we're going to keep it empty, open curly bracket, feedback dot inner HTML equals, quote, that's right. You got it. Bravo. And last but not least, function btn3 function, open close parentheses, open curly bracket, close curly bracket, feedback dot inner HTML equals, quote, sorry, that's incorrect. Let's try a different response. I'm going to save that. Go back and I'm going to refresh this page. Dog is wrong. Frog is wrong. Cat is right. So there you go. And the way it would work is if you wanted to load this into a website builder, you can simply copy what you have inside the body and you would paste it into the website builder and it would work as well if you want to embed it on a page. But that's it. I think that's all we're going to cover in this video is how to make some buttons and make those buttons interactive. Take a look, make sure you got it right. Investigate any errors you get inside the console. And if you do get errors, use those as your guide for where you made the mistake. It'll highlight what line you made the mistake on. So for example, if I call this BBN and I save and refresh right now, it's going to give me an error. Oh, did I not refresh? Let's try that again. Oh, I thought it would give me an error. Did I not? Wait, did I not save it? What did I do? I thought I wrote BBN here. Save it. Refresh it. I figured it was going to give me an error. I'm shocked. What? BBN. I'm surprised. Why am I'm missing something? It's supposed to give me an error. BBN. BTN. BBN. Save. Refresh. There we go. Okay. I was like, I'm doing something wrong. It's going to say BBN is not defined. It's not going to know what BBN is. And it's going to give me back an error. And notice it tells me what line the error is on. So if I go over here on line 24, I see, oh, I wrote BBN instead of BTN. And if I save it and I go back and refresh it, it works now. So use this as your guide if you're making mistakes. And of course, if you need help, do let me know. And that's it for this video. See you next time.